This video provides the final argument that ends the discussion of who is better, Neymar or Mbappé, once and for all. But to fully understand why one is better than the other, we have to go through some very important points, which will help put everything into context. We're going to take 3 points into account to evaluate each of their games, but it's the 4th point that will really end this debate. First, we'll evaluate their numbers, then the difference each of them makes. Thirdly, we'll understand their relevance to the teams they've played for. But it's the 4th point that will end this debate, because it's an argument that everyone ignores when it comes to who's better. Many people make the mistake of evaluating the achievements of teams or squads alongside the individual performance of each one. At times, this makes sense, but at many other times, it doesn't. To illustrate this further, we can look at Lionel Messi's career with the Argentinian national team. He only won a major title with his national team in 2021, a year before winning the World Cup. But there was never any doubt that he was one of the best in the world, even without national team titles. But it also works the other way around. For example, when Portugal won the Euro Cup in 2016, Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't Portugal's best player in that edition, but the title praised his performance. This is normal in soccer. Individual achievements and the lack of them directly affect people's opinion of who is better. But this is not always fair. So let's end this debate on a fair note. Shall we begin? First, let's evaluate each player's stats in the most important points of the game. The figures for both players are well above average, but each one stands out in a specific way. To be more assertive, we're not going to focus on the number of games and the number of goals, because that will always change. Let's focus on the average number of goals per game, which is more difficult to change. So far, Neymar has more goals than Mbappé, but he also has a lot more games, so the real figure here will be the average number of goals. And Mbappé has a better figure. While the Frenchman has an average of around 1 goal per game, Neymar has around 0.6 goals per game. Looking at these figures alone, we already have a very important point that should be taken into account. Mbappé has a better average of goals per game than Neymar, but people forget to take into account something important. Neymar is not a finisher. Neymar has always been a playmaker, either playing as a left winger or as a playmaker, which is a playmaking role that doesn't limit the player to a specific space on the pitch. In other words, Neymar's job is not to score goals, but to create chances. Mbappé started his career like this and soon became the team's finisher. Proof of this is that Neymar's average number of assists and goals is higher than Mbappe's. This question shows a reality that many people ignore. Those who average more goals per game don't always finish better. Mbappé needs 4 chances to score, while Neymar only needs 2. And when it comes to a player's quality, we have to evaluate the variety of goals. Mbappé is very efficient with his right leg, but he doesn't have many variety of goals. 80% of his goals come with his right leg, 18% with his left leg, and 2% with his head. Neymar, on the other hand, scores 67.5% of his goals with his right leg, 25% with his left leg, 7% with his head, 0.5% with other parts of his body, such as his shoulder and chest, and has 22 free kick goals. The figures show that although Mbappe's average number of goals per game is better, Neymar is a better finisher because he needs fewer chances to score and has more weapons to score with. Well, although Neymar has better numbers, that doesn't mean he's the best. So let's move on to the next topic. What makes them different? When we talk about what makes each of them stand out, we need to clarify something that most people confuse. Agility is different from skill, and that's exactly what sets them apart. Neymar is one of the most skillful players in soccer. He has endless resources to get past his markers in the most creative ways. It's very common in his career to find several goals in which he dribbles past more than 4 defenders. That's rare in soccer. But although he is very skillful, he is not as agile. Agility is the response time added to the speed of the player. Although Neymar is very skillful, he is not as fast as Mbappé, and this influences his game. He needs many touches on the ball to get past a marker, which makes him a vulnerable target for fouls and increases the risk of injury. On the other hand, he can get rid of a marker even if the marking is very good and close to him, which is very difficult. Mbappé, on the other hand, doesn't have the skill of Neymar. He's not a player with as much creative flair, although he does make some great moves that require a certain level of skill, but his forte isn't skill. As many people mistake, his focus is agility, and this is very important for understanding the game. Most of the time, Mbappé needs space to get past a marker. In other words, he relies on a bit of skill and a lot of speed, which makes him a very difficult player to mark when you are far away from him. Almost 100% of the time, he will pass the defender. This is very good because it reduces the number of fouls suffered and creates many opportunities. But when the defender manages to mark him closely, his game is very limited. It's impossible to decide who is better by analyzing this concept alone, because both players work very well with the weapons they have. But if the question is, who is more different, the answer is Neymar. It's very difficult to find players with this level of skill and finishing together. Agile players are easier to find. Mbappé isn't the fastest player in the world, but what makes him stand out is his agility combined with his finishing ability and the number of chances he gets during the game, because he knows how to exploit that speed without the ball too. But as I said, that alone is not enough to say who is the best. The third point is what makes a lot of people make up their minds. And maybe you're going to make up your mind now. Who is or was most impactful in the teams they played for? This question will change the game. So far it's been clear that Neymar is the most complete player, but this quality hasn't made him the star of the teams he's played for. When Neymar emerged, he was playing for Santos and was definitely the best player in Brazil, so much so that he was the only player to make FIFA's top 10 in South America. At Barcelona, he was never able to play a leading role, obviously because Messi was there, but he formed one of the best attacking trios in the history of soccer, alongside Messi and Suarez. He was very relevant and impactful for the team, but he wasn't the leading player, but a very important supporting player. At PSG, the story was different. Neymar arrived as the protagonist, and until then, the biggest signing in the history of soccer, he led the team to the end of the Champions League and had some great performances. But due to many injuries, he ended up losing the protagonist position to Mbappé, who was always very present and efficient. Although Neymar had already won and been top scorer in the Champions League, he hadn't done so as a protagonist. Mbappé, on the other hand, hasn't had much success with relevant titles playing for PSG. But his performance at Monaco was worthy of prominence, and the achievement of prominence playing in the same team as Neymar is very relevant. But the highlight is undoubtedly his achievements in the national team. Neymar has a relevant title for the Brazilian national team, in which he was champion and the best player in the competition. While Mbappé, although not the best player in France in that 2018 World Cup, already surprised the world by scoring in the final and being champion. But it was the next World Cup in 2022 that put him on the top shelf of world soccer, making great performances and scoring 3 goals in the final. Although he was not champion, he did something that had never been done in history. So we can say that Mbappé has been more relevant to the teams he has played for. However, that doesn't mean he's better. Remember what I said about using the team to evaluate individual performance? In many cases, a player is favored or disfavored by the team he plays for. And in the case of national teams, this is very clear. Mbappé took one of the best and most promising French generations while Neymar took one of the worst Brazilian generations, where most of the time he was alone with no one of his quality to share the burden. But remember what I said at the beginning, what will define who is really better is the next topic, which will end the discussion once and for all. Before we get to the conclusion, be sure to like the video if you like it. This type of video is a lot of work, so it would be nice if you could help me out with your like, and if you like this type of content, follow us now for more. So who's better, Neymar or Mbappé? Everything we analyze is data. There's a number and proof for everything. But in sport, there are many things that are brilliant and don't make it into the statistics. And that's exactly where the answer lies. This is something that people don't take into account because they only look at the hot numbers, like goals and assists. But in soccer, a lot is hidden. What makes a player stand out is how much he facilitates the play of those who play with him. When you analyze the play of Kevin De Bruyne, Toni Kroos, or Zidane, for example, you understand that their job is to facilitate the play of other players. And that's very important in soccer. Neymar does this masterfully, and many of his incredible plays don't count towards his numbers, such as this one. He constructs the entire move, doing all the hard work and making it easy for another player to provide a relatively easy assist. And this happens a lot in Neymar's game, but these numbers don't go into the statistics and take the credit away from playmakers like him. Neymar is one of the most complete players in soccer, having many weapons at his disposal and making him a real unicorn on the pitch, with a lot of finishing power, skill, and playmaking. Mbappé will be more relevant to soccer, but Neymar is better. Do you agree or disagree?